you and I, we're going to go 32 teams, roughly 2 minutes per team here, okay, where we're going to talk about the headlines that we have found all throughout Twitter and the news universe here for fantasy football. There's some great follows on Twitter, by the way, 32 Beat Writers, Coach Speak Index. There's a lot of great follows that you can go and check out on the Twitter sphere, the Twitterverse, whatever we want to call it. All right, let's not waste any more time, Dave. Let's get started. I'm going to pull up my stopwatch right here. Are we ready? We're going to start here. We're going to go in alphabetical order.
We're doing something nobody has ever done before. An entire week's worth of training camp reports crammed into less than 60 minutes. We're making history here, Alfredo.
Nobody has ever talked about 32 teams in one podcast. Nobody. Don't look it up. Just trust us. All right, Dave, here we go. We're going to go in alphabetical order. Let's start with the Arizona Cardinals. Zay Jones has been a standout, quotes. Potential wide receiver 2 for this team. What's your hype meter rating on this 1 to 5 and why?
Give it a 3. Zay Jones is a very good football player. The big issues have been some of the off-field stuff and some of the health issues. But if he is healthy, I think that probably checks out that he would be the wide receiver too. And I know a lot of people are getting excited about Michael Wilson, and a lot of people are getting excited about Greg Dortch. But if we're getting reports that Zay Jones is healthy and playing as a wide receiver too, we should probably be looking at Zay Jones as a potential, round 13, round 14, round 15 pick at the end of your drafts.
I love exactly what this episode is going to be because it's you saying that you're excited about stuff and me saying that I am not excited about it. You said that the Zay Jones being a standout right now is a 3 for you. I'm going to give this a 1. I'm not interested at all. I was maybe going to be drafting Zay Jones in round 14 or 15. And the more I think about it too, Zay Jones as the potential wide receiver 2 means at best he's going to be the 3rd target on this offense, probably more like the 4th weapon used. And that's not including Greg Dortch, who's going to get some work in there. So it's a 1 for me. I wish I cared more. Let's go to our next team. Let me reset the clock. Here we go. Next team, Atlanta Falcons. Kirk Cousins has been the best player on the field. That's kind of a good and bad. I would have loved to have heard that some of these skill players were maybe the best player on the field, but I guess the rising tide will lift all boats here. Dave, I'll start us off with this one. For Kirk Cousins being best player on the field, I'll give us a 4. It gets that 1 point minus there because I wanted to see the skill players, but he's the guy that gets the ball to them. So that's exciting to see that he's doing well. Like that's why we're in on the Falcons players. So I'm going to give it a 4, a little bit of happiness and excitement from me here.
I'm going to give this a 2 because Kirk Cousins is, an above average starting quarterback. Don't get me wrong, but he's Kirk Cousins. I think this is just kind of a shock to a lot of the Atlanta beat reporters who have had to watch the corpse of Matt Ryan and Desmond Ridder and Marcus Mariota finally getting to see what an actual NFL quarterback looks like. So congrats, Atlanta. This is what good quarterback play looks like.
But the underlying thing here is that he's healthy. He looks good. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And not to mention, Michael Penix Jr. has also looked good, and that's been talked about as well. So
it's July. Everybody looks good, baby.
Oh, look at that. I like it. Let the hate flow through you. Next team on here, Baltimore Ravens. Rashod Bateman is expected to have a breakout. Oh, I'm sorry. That's the show sheet from 2022. My bad. Yeah, Rashod Bateman expected to have a breakout season. Here we go again. Dave, scale of 1 to 5. Hype meter. Let's hear it.
2. I want to get more excited about Rashod Bateman because I've liked this guy since he was a prospect coming into the league, but this is going into year 4 now. Or is it year 3? Whatever it is. It's been too long and we haven't seen Bateman put it together. I've talked a little bit about how I expect the Ravens to start using more 2 tight end sets. It's very realistic that behind Derrick Henry, Lamar Jackson, Zay Flowers, Mark Andrews, Isaiah Likely, Rashod Bateman could end up being like the 6th or 7th option in this offense. So I'll throw a late round dart every now and then on Rashod Bateman, but with the way that he's already starting to climb up in ADP, it's really tough to draft him.
I'm going to give this a 4. Just because I want to believe in something. You say I don't like fun, but I want to believe in something here. And it's because this is a talented player that is in a talented offense that can score a lot of points. There's still tons of opportunity. The Ravens not going out and getting another receiver tells me that they do still trust him. It seems like this is not just fluff. It is actual hype. Now, the problem here is what does that actual hype turn into? Can he
Hmm.
stay healthy? And I think that's where we all just kind of roll our eyes at the Rashod Bateman thing. It's not that he's not good. It's not that the Ravens don't want to use him. It's can he stay healthy for a full season and really perform the way we want him to? Next team here, Buffalo Bills. This is a guy that we have not really talked about too much on this team
Hmm.
because we talk a lot about Khalil Shakir, we talk a lot about Ray Davis, James Cook, Dalton Kincaid, Josh Allen, but everyone's, I guess, new favorite sleeper on this team, Curtis Samuel, is quote looking like the wide receiver one, simultaneously also taking reps with the running backs. Not typically what you hear when talking about a team's wide receiver one, but I'm very intrigued by this. I will say there's a big opportunity for someone there in Buffalo, and I think you and I have both believed that it's going to be Khalil Shakir, and I still believe that because just 3-4 days before this recording, Khalil Shakir was getting all the love coming out of training camp from Joe Brady and from Josh Allen, and I think we're just going to get a cycle of different weeks here. I'm going to give this a 3 because, like I said, the wide receiver one taking reps with the running backs, that's not really the wide receiver one. That just seems more like he's a really fun weapon X that they want to use. Dave?
Curtis Samuel, Debo Samuel, Spider-Man pointing meme. They're kind of doing the same thing here, and we've known that for years. We know that Joe Brady likes Curtis Samuel. I think that he's going to be looking like the wide receiver one in Buffalo because they're going to be using him creatively, and he's getting, reps out of the slot, reps out wide, reps with the running backs. They're going to see a lot of him on the field, but I still think that when it comes to being a pure wide receiver, I believe that Khalil Shakir is a better wide receiver. So I'm not totally ignoring this report. I've been kind of out on Curtis Samuel. I think this is noteworthy. I'll probably start drafting him a little bit more than I was, but I'm still holding strong in my idea that Curtis Samuel is the guy to roster in this passing attack.
Next team on the list, Carolina Panthers. Diontae Johnson will be the focal point of the offense. Dave, there was
Duh,
quote. Yeah,
duh.
there was a quote the other day from Dave Canales when asked
Yep.
about the offensive identity, and he just basically said, "We are going to be looking for wherever Diontae Johnson is. That's we just want to pinpoint where he is on the field and get him the ball." Guys, this could not be more obvious. We are seeing this from a mile away, and honestly, this one's a 5 for me. The hype has already been there. Getting just the recurring hype coming out of training camp, getting the offensive coordinator to say it, getting the head coach to say it, getting the beat writers to say it. Diontae Johnson is going to be the guy there, and the price is not increasing. And I don't understand. You can get him at such a great cost in fantasy drafts. Diontae Johnson for me, this is a 5 on the hype meter.
Yeah, 5 for me as well. Already one of my most drafted wide receivers. You and I have been talking about this since the minute the trade went down. We're expecting the Carolina Panthers to be better. We're expecting improvements to Bryce Young. Bryce Young has also, we're talking about Diontae Johnson here, but a lot of reports that Bryce Young is looking good, making some really tough throws. So Diontae Johnson, the path is there for him to see 150, 160 targets in this offense. I'd go 6 out of 5 if we could. I'm hyped about Diontae
Oh,
Johnson in this offense.
you're a saucy little boy today. 6 out of 5. All right. I'm there with you, actually. Next team on here, your Chicago Bears, David. And this headline, just it's a fart in the wind here. Gerald Everett has been the
Ooh.
standout, getting reps with the ones. Yay! What does this mean, Dave?
No, I think this actually is important, not because I'm telling you to go out and draft Gerald Everett, but I think what this tells us is that Cole Kmet, who is still getting drafted as a high end tight end too,
Hmm.
is probably a little bit overvalued right now. Like he's already got tough sledding with Keenan Allen, DJ Moore, and Roma Dunze likely ahead of him in the pecking order. But now if he's splitting tight end snaps with Gerald Everett, a guy who's been with Shane Waldron during his time in Seattle and his time in Los Angeles, he knows the offense inside and out. If he's getting reps with the ones, that tells me that Cole Kmet probably shouldn't be anywhere on your draft radar. And he's still getting drafted as like the tight end 14, tight end 15. I see almost no path to fantasy relevance for Cole Kmet. So not only do I think that he is overvalued, I don't even think that he should be drafted in fantasy leagues this year.
Wow,
Oh,
strong
so
words.
so so the hype here, I guess, would be 4 because I think there is meaningful things to take away from this report. Not to do with Gerald Everett, but just this is a not good for Cole Kmet.
Yeah, I guess if that's the way we're gonna have to phrase this one, yeah, I'll be with you on that. 4, actually 3 because I wasn't drafting Cole Kmet anyways. But I guess
Right.
the believability of this headline here has me staying away if there was any shot of me drafting Cole Kmet in fantasy drafts. Next team on here, the Cincinnati Bengals. Chase Brown has been a standout and could have a large role. I've been seeing a bunch of really just positive reports coming out of Bengals camp, not just on Chase Brown, but on a bunch of different players. For me, the Chase Brown one stands out the most because this is we kind of don't know what's going to be happening with that backfield. We know that Jamar Chase is getting the ball. We know T. Higgins is getting the ball. We'll figure out whoever the third target is. But for now, the third target actually might end up being Chase Brown, and he might be the explosive running back who is getting 50% of the running back touches. I know we're all excited about Zach Moss, but there hasn't really been anything in his career that shows he can do this for a full season and that we should just be trusting him. Chase Brown is cheaper in drafts. He's got more of the upside with the explosive plays, with the receiving ability. Him being a standout, having a larger role, that's a 4 for me. 4.5. Tilting on a 5, just as I'm saying it. Dave?
It's a 5 for me. Yeah, it's a 5
Yeah,
for me.
all right.
Zach
I'll go
Moss
5.
has all
I'll go
the
to 5. Let's
telltale
have some fun.
signs. Yeah, I mean, these are the stories we want to see. Like Zach Moss has all the telltale signs of being a potential dead zone running back, like getting up there in age, inefficient, on a new team, and we're drafting him for projectable volume, but we're not drafting him because he's a very good player. Chase Brown, on the other hand, is a very good player. Like he was third in the league in breakaway rate last year, behind only Keaton Mitchell and Devon Achane. And I think there's this like misconception that he's just like a little guy, but he's kind of stout. He carried a pretty big load when he was in college. I don't think that he's going to run away with the job the way that Joe Mixon did in previous years, but if Chase Brown's getting 50, 60, 70% of the touches in this Bengals offense, the path to a RB1 finish is easily there. So I'm not getting that far yet where I'm saying like Chase Brown is an RB1, but considering where he's getting drafted and the potential upside in this offense, this is a 5 out of 5 for me. I'm hyped.
I like it. I like it. All right. Ooh, that was the first time we actually hit 2 minutes in the clock. Next team here, Dallas Cowboys. Jalen Tolbert looking like the wide receiver 3.
Skipped over the Cleveland Browns.
Did
Just
I really?
want to
Oh,
keep it
look
on
at
track
that.
here.
Well, okay, let's go. If I just gave it away then. Let's go back to the Cleveland Browns here. Nick Chubb sprinting, but not expected to be back for the start of the season. How do we even hype this? I'm not like hyped that he's injured, but I guess we'll call this the believability rating. I'm
Yeah.
giving this a 5 in that any shot that I had of wanting to draft Nick Chubb or hoping that I could enjoy him in fantasy football again is just gone. So for me, this is a 5 and how important it is, how much I believe this, and I think the impact it's going to have on the Cleveland Browns is going to be tough. This is a team that may not be able to run the ball very well. I like Jerome Ford, but he's not Nick Chubb. And so there's going to be a lot of pressure put on this passing offense, Dave.
Yeah, this one for me, again, like I don't know how to rate this one because I'm not hyped about it, but I'm definitely buying it. But I think this is like the perfect example of like teams putting out fluff pieces during training camp, like him squatting. That's impressive to see him squatting that much. Him sprinting in a straight line, that's impressive to see. But like neither of those are impacted by an ACL. Like, can he cut laterally? Can he decelerate from a full sprint? Those are the things we want to see that indicate a good recovery from this ACL reconstruction. We're not seeing either of those yet. So the fact that they're still saying that he's not going to be ready for the start of the season, that concerns me. I'll draft some Jerome Ford here and there. I'll draft some Deonta Foreman, but Nick Chubb really, really needs to slide for me to even entertain drafting him.
Okay. Now we can actually do the Dallas Cowboys here. Jalen Tolbert looking like the wide receiver 3. We have been tricked by the ghost of Michael Gallup before, which, by the way, Michael Gallup just stepping away from
Yeah.
football. Side note.
Just never
Godspeed.
bounced back from that ACL, man. It was just
No.
he was great and then just fell off after that ACL.
Yeah. Dallas Cowboys, they could be a team that similarly to the Cleveland Browns may not be able to rely on a steady running game, may have to pass the ball a ton. They've got a quarterback that can do it, Dak Prescott. It seems like the wide receiver 1 and 2 positions are obviously set. CeeDee Lamb, Brandon Cooks. So Jalen Tolbert going out there. He may not be the target 3 because that's Jake Ferguson probably,
Right.
who's actually the target 2. But Jalen Tolbert, wide receiver 3, I guess I'll give this a 3. I want to be excited. I wish this was actually more. It's just knowing the other players that are on this team. I think if Brandon Cooks wasn't there, I'd be more excited about Jalen Tolbert jumping into the starting lineup. I think that's where I'm at on this. I don't know that I'll even be drafting Jalen Tolbert, but I think he'll be one of those guys that has a good game in one of the first few weeks of the season, becomes a waiver wire pickup, and people just get
Yeah.
frustrated throughout the season.
Yeah, it's 2 for me, and, like, I'll spend an 18th round pick on Jalen Tolbert and best ball here and there, but I'm not too excited, but I think the little bit of excitement and hype that I'm getting from this is that all these reports are about, like, who's the wide receiver 3 gonna be? Is it gonna be, who's, who are the other Jalen Brooks or Kevontae Turbin or Ryan Flournoy? But I think the thing to take away from here is that Brandon Cooks is very clearly the wide receiver 2, and right now he's getting drafted in, like, round 12 of fantasy. Like, you're getting him for close to nothing. He could easily see his role expand from what it was last year. So, not too excited about Jalen Tolbert, but I think that the things not being said here in this report that Brandon Cooks is locked in as the wide receiver 2 on a good offense is being kind of overlooked here. I think that Brandon
Mhm.
Cooks is a huge value right now in drafts.
Yeah, for the Cowboys, it's going to be a different looking offense. There's going to be a lot more commitment to that pass. I'll be intrigued to see if they end up trading for a running back. I think that could sort of turn the tides a little bit there for that offense. Before we keep going here, I want to remind everybody you got tons of ways that you can enjoy this podcast. First of all, here on youtube.com/at football guys fantasy. Make sure you like this video, comment down below, maybe a headline that we missed or something that you disagree with us on here in the hype meter for these different 32 teams. And obviously, make sure you're subscribed to the channel. That's how you're going to get notified for all the next episodes that come out. And during the season, the videos are going to come out the day before the audio podcast. And speaking of the audio podcast, make sure you're subscribed on Apple or Spotify, wherever you get your podcast, and you'll be able to find us and get that daily. We've been talking about who is going to be the winner of our giveaway for the Football Guys Fantasy Football Show Listener League, the best finger drums in the nation, Dave Kluge. And the winner for this giveaway is Jacob Blackburn on Twitter at Jacobo_Moses. We want to thank you so much for commenting, for being a loyal listener, a loyal audience member, just a fan of this, and can't wait to have you in the listener league. We'll reach out to you and get your spot in the league, man. So thank you so much, Jacob. Dave, let's keep this train rolling, man. Let's keep this rolling. Denver Broncos, next team. We're getting conflicting reports about the running back usage. We've heard Javonte Williams not looking good. And then we've heard Javonte Williams is looking good. And then we've heard Samaje Perine getting cut. And then we hear Samaje Perine not getting cut. And then Jaleel
Mhm.
McLaughlin looks good. And Andre Esme looks good. And what do we do here? What are your thoughts on the running back situation in Denver?
I think when you have so many conflicting reports like this, different beat reporters saying different things about different players, I think like the actionable advice here is just kind of stick to your priors. Like you can kind of tell yourself any story you want by looking at different reports. Like if you're a Javonte Williams guy, there's tons of pro Javonte articles out there. If you're a pro Jaleel McLaughlin guy, you're going to find a lot of people telling you McLaughlin's guy. If you're into Audric Estime, you can find reports saying that Audric Estime looks fantastic. But at the end of the day, there's just so many conflicting reports right now about this very muddied running back room that I think whatever stance you had a week ago, just stick to that stance now because you can find yourself just getting into a headache of different headlines and storylines with this backfield.
Yeah, I'm with you. Typically, I would normally just say go with the cheapest guy on the
Yeah.
roster that's going to give you the upside. For me, they're all so cheap. All these running backs, and the guy that I think still maintains the highest upside continues to be Javonte Williams. I know you really like Jaleel McLaughlin, and I think you're right. Just stick to your gut here, especially when there's so many conflicting reports on the people who are actually there at camp, and we know very little. I'm still very excited about Javonte Williams. I think
Yeah.
the reward is worth the risk right now in drafts.
But I will say, Audric Estime went from somebody who was like completely off my board to somebody that I'm entertaining at the very end of my draft, just in case. And I think that's the one thing that shifted for me here is I went from absolutely no interest in Audric Estime to maybe a smidge of interest at the end of my draft.
Hmm. Gotta say, I have no interest at the end of my draft. But all right, let's go into the next team here. Detroit Lions. This one, spicy, and I love it. I'm happy. Jameson Williams looking like a completely different player. We talked about Jameson Williams on our last episode of some of our favorite late round picks. Dave, the reports have just been glowing. And it's been from teammates, from coaches, from beat reporters, from everyone, even from Jameson himself. Everyone is on board the Jameson Williams hype train this year. What are you rating this on the hype meter?
I'm giving it a 2 because we have heard this about Jameson
Oh, I
Williams in
hate
the
you so
past.
much.
Last year we heard a lot of, he looks great, looks like a different player. I want to see it on a field. I think that the
I
way
don't remember
he
that.
plays with his speed really shows up better in training camp when they're playing in shorts. I want to see it in pads, in contact. I mean, I'm already pretty high on Jameson Williams, so I can't move him much higher than I already have. But this is one of those, a year 3 player who hasn't done too much so far. I don't want to buy too much into the reports, even though I'm a believer in the talent. The reports aren't moving the needle for me too much.
It's a 4 for me. I think that you have to subtract 1 just because it is a player in his 3rd year, but it's the circumstances that we keep talking about. It was the suspension, it was the injury, it's all the things that we keep coming back to as to why he hasn't been able to produce. This is still a young guy. Like we said, he's younger than Ricky Pearsall and Xavier Leggett. He's younger than current rookies in the NFL. And you say that we've been getting these reports before. Like we've maybe gotten that about explosive plays where beat reporters have said this, but we never really got the glowing reports from Dan Campbell that Jameson Williams is a full-time starter. We haven't gotten these reports from Jared Goff saying, "Oh, this guy, everything has clicked." That's what has me a little bit more excited about Jameson Williams going into year number 3. Dave, the Green Bay Packers, your favorite team in the NFL. We are getting this perfect, just classic playing the hits. AJ Dillon's in the best shape of his life. How much does this matter for AJ Dillon? And the rest of the running backs on this team. Like, what's the hype meter on this?
This is a 0 out of 5 for me. And we talked about it like on the audio only portion of the show, like what reports we are paying attention to, what reports we aren't paying attention to. AJ Dillon, I love you, man. You got some sick quads, and you look great in shorts. But we've seen you play football for 4 years now, and we know the type of player. I think with Josh Jacobs and Marshawn Lloyd ahead of him on the depth chart, it's going to be really tough for AJ Dillon to find himself in any sort of relevant role. So not buying into this whatsoever. I don't care if AJ Dillon is free at any of my drafts. I don't want him this year.
Yeah, I don't care. This is like a -6 out of 5.
Yeah.
Josh Jacobs, lead running back. Marshawn Lloyd is the next exciting guy they drafted early. AJ Dillon was the guy that they signed prior to the draft because they weren't sure what was going to happen in the draft. And they're just like, let's bring back the guy that kind of knows the system a bit. And they didn't even want him. Like that's why when a team doesn't resign a player immediately, they really didn't want him. They got back with their ex because they didn't really know what was out there, and they just
And
settled.
even the
That's it.
contingent upside with AJ Dillon, we've seen so many opportunities where Aaron Jones has been hurt, and we're like, all right, fire up your AJ Dillon, and then you get like 7.2 PBR points. It's just
Yeah.
no, I don't want it.
No. Next team, Houston Texans, Stefon Diggs, potentially the wide receiver 1 question mark. Dave, you and I have been kind of notoriously anti Stefon Diggs throughout this offseason. We've been very much into the other wide receivers, Nico
Mhm.
Collins, Tank Dell, but now we are getting reports. Stefon Diggs looks great. He's getting targeted. He's getting open. He's making plays. How much does this matter to you? What is it on the hype meter?
I got to put some weight into this. I'll give it a 3 out of 5. I'm still pretty steadfast in my belief that Nico Collins and Tank Dell are going to be ahead of him, but maybe this is just like a freshly motivated Stefon Diggs with a new team on a new offense. Maybe I was too quick to write him off for dead. There have been some fun clips that have come out of Houston's camp with CJ Stroud and Stefon Diggs connecting. Diggs has fallen quite a bit in ADP. He's going almost like 2 or 3 picks ahead of Tank Dell right now, where he's slid all the way back there. So I don't know. Maybe doing these best ball drafts, maybe I should start sprinkling a little bit more Stefon Diggs in just in case.
I'm going to also give this a 3. Um, if the price keeps going down for Stefon Diggs, I will be more in. The problem was that Stefon Diggs was going like around wide receiver 16, 17 before. If he's getting closer to that wide receiver 24, 25 range, then I'm in. I think that's the big thing to take away here is that, okay, I think the big thing to take away here is that there's not a clear pecking order. As
Mhm.
much as I think we want to believe that it's one of these guys, that it's, oh, well, he targets Tank Dell, or, oh, he's going to target Nico Collins because he just got the money, or, oh, they brought in Stefon Diggs. We don't know. And I think we can do the same thing that we did when we talked about the Denver Broncos running backs. When you don't know something, stick to your priors, go with the
Yeah.
cheapest, go with your gut like that. And that's kind of where I stick. So I'm going to still stick with Nico Collins and Tank Dell in drafts, but I'm now much more likely to draft Stefon Diggs if he keeps falling in drafts and we keep getting these reports. Next team, the Indianapolis Colts. Alec Pierce is getting reps ahead of Adonai Mitchell. Also, not to mention, Josh Downs has been the clear number 2
Mhm.
target on this team, notably absent from some of these reports, Jelani Woods. um,
Oh yeah,
there's
he's like the tight end 3 right now on the roster from what I've been reading.
So trying to figure out who this second target is on the Colts, it sounds like it's going to be Josh Downs, and that AD Mitchell has quite the uphill battle here. What is
Mhm.
your hype meter on this, Dave?
So I think this is absolutely worth paying attention to. And I know a lot of people are going to be like, oh, I remember when BC Johnson was getting reps ahead of Justin Jefferson. I think that's a different situation. Justin Jefferson was a first round pick. We knew he was really good. AD Mitchell slid quite a bit in the draft. He's still a raw prospect that needs to work on some of his refinement. So yeah, I mean, it would be foolish not to move AD Mitchell down a little bit. But much like I said with the Dallas Cowboys when we were talking about the Jalen Tolbert wide receiver three, I think the biggest takeaway from here is that Josh Downs is unquestioned the wide receiver two. And that's kind of the thing that's being said. Without it being said, we know Michael Pittman's the one there. It looks like Josh Downs is clearly the wide receiver two. He's a guy that we've both talked a lot about a lot for the last couple of years. We like Josh Downs. And if he's going to be number two on this team in targets, he is getting vastly underdrafted right now at his current ADP.
Yeah, I'm with you. If I make this headline specifically about Josh Downs being the wide receiver two on this team and how much better he can be going into year two, I'm going to make that a 4, maybe even a 5. I'm very excited about Josh Downs and what this Indianapolis Colts offense could be with Shane Steichen and a full year of Anthony Richardson being healthy. I think that we could get some really, really fun skill players in fantasy football. I don't think we have much with Alec Pearson. I think it might take a little bit of time for Adonai Mitchell to get himself on the field. And when he does, I think he can make some plays. But until then, I am still very much in on Josh Downs, especially, like you said, Dave, at his draft cost. Next team, resetting the timer, Jacksonville Jaguars. Here we go again. Tank Bigsby looking better than last year and expecting a bigger role. We heard this a lot last year that the Jaguars and Doug Peterson were going to limit Travis Etienne's role and get some reps to Tank Bigsby. So, Dave, are you buying it? What is this on the hype meter or trust meter or whatever kind of meter we want to make it?
I'm going to give this a 4 because the historical tendency we've seen from Doug Peterson is that he does like to have kind of a committee approach. And I think Bigsby just wasn't ready for the NFL last year. He looked slow and he was unable to break tackles. A lot of things that showed up on his college film didn't show up on his NFL film last year. But we still saw Peterson was like trying to get Dearness Johnson involved and was still giving Bigsby a fair amount of carries even when he wasn't looking good. So if Tank Bigsby can take that step forward in his development, I could see a world where Doug Peterson reels back the volume for ETN a little bit. So this is less of a go out and get Tank Bigsby thing and more of a maybe we should be a little bit more wary about Travis Etienne and maybe he doesn't get that same workload that made him so valuable last year.
I'm going to give this a 2 because this you said that last year we didn't get to see all the things that popped on Tank Bigsby's tape. My problem is I never saw it pop on his tape. I wasn't a big Bigsby truther. I wasn't really a big fan of the tape. I had him behind guys like Tyjae Spears in that running back rookie class, and getting him onto the Jaguars and being firmly behind Travis Etienne and not being a guy that I know he actually led Auburn in receptions while he was there, but he's
Mhm.
not innately a receiving back. There's not really anything he does better than Travis Etienne. There's not a fixed role for him where we're saying, okay, he is the passing down back or he is the goal line back. There was nothing that made me say he's going to get on the field more. And when he gets there, it's going to be productive. So for that, I'm going to keep giving this a 2. And I'm happy to draft Travis Etienne where he is, but I probably won't be moving Travis Etienne up in my rankings or in average draft position. Next team, Kansas City Chiefs. Xavier Worthy is generating buzz. A new week, a new wide receiver for the Kansas City Chiefs that we are talking about, Dave. It's been Rashee Rice. It's been Hollywood Brown. Now it's Xavier Worthy. And I kind of jokingly said this to you on the last episode when you were talking about the last couple episodes where you've been talking about Rashee Rice and then Hollywood Brown. And I said, dude, I'm just here looking at highlights of Xavier Worthy catching a ridiculous pass from Patrick Mahomes. And it seems like that's making the rounds with not just the Twitter people, but the beat reporters seem to think that Xavier Worthy, and Andy Reid has been saying Xavier Worthy is going to be a big part of this offense early on. So where are you at on the hype meter now with Xavier Worthy?
I'll give this one a 4, because we're seeing a lot more. Like, we know that the deep game is there, and we've seen those highlights, but he's also beginning, along with Kadarius Toney, some touches out of the backfield. Like, they want to find creative ways to get him the ball. And in the article that I wrote about Hollywood Brown, saying, why he should break out, I said everything I said about Hollywood Brown could also be applicable to Xavier Worthy. And I said, I'm putting my chips on Marquise Brown to play this kind of queen on a chessboard type of role for Andy Reid, but it could just as easily be Xavier Worthy. So this is a guy who was, drafted highly, and he is a good wide receiver. It would be foolish to ignore any drumbeat coming out of Kansas City. So yeah, I think it would be silly to ignore this report. Xavier Worthy, if he's looking good, we should absolutely take notice of that.
Yeah. Andy Reid does not say this often that rookies are going to get involved early. He usually says that they need to learn and it's going to take time. And he seems like he is ready to go and get Worthy on the field. Next team, we're staying in division. Las Vegas Raiders. Aidan O'Connell appears to be ahead of Gardner Minshew in the QB battle. I don't think this matters to anyone that's drafting those. Like, no one's drafting those quarterbacks. No one's excited to go and get them. However, this does matter for the weapons around them,
Mhm.
specifically Devontae Adams, Jacoby Myers, Brock Bowers, Zamir White. Hype meter. Let's kind of make this about the Raiders offense in general. How excited are you that Aidan O'Connell could be the guy over Gardner Minshew? Because right now I'm at a 2, maybe
Yeah,
even less. I
yeah, I'm at
don't
a 1.
know that I have a lot of excitement about Aidan O'Connell. Gardner Minshew, at least we saw him do it for the Colts last year. We've seen him do it for the Jaguars. We know he can at least hyper target one guy, maybe two. Aidan O'Connell, we could go out there and get, a goose egg or a 3-point offensive output with him. Not saying he's like awful, but for fantasy, I don't know that we're going to get the ceiling that we want.
Yeah, I've got nothing to add really. This is a 1 out of 5 for me. I would have had much more faith in Gardner Minshew to lead a competent fantasy relevant offense that I would in Aiden O'Connell. Highs are going to be high, lows are going to be lows. At least with Gardner Minshew, there'd be something steady that we can count on week in and week out. You didn't even mention his time with Philadelphia, where Gardner Minshew was doing a decent job there. Like, we know Gardner
Yeah.
Minshew can lead a competent offense. I don't have that same faith in Aiden O'Connell.
Next team, Los Angeles Chargers. This one's just funny. Quentin Johnston looks great when the
When
coaches have to tell the defense to ease up on the wide receivers because you're playing too physical.
Dude, this is an
So,
embarrassment. This is like, how was this report even allowed to be published? This
ah,
is just awful for Los Angeles.
I mean, how does this even get out to the reporters? Like, how obvious were the coaches making it? Did they say it? Did they just leave practice and tell? Yeah, we know we had to tell the DBs to really ease up because they were just getting too physical. And you look at the video of Quentin Johnston making this big
QJ is
catch
blanketed.
where everyone is cheering. Quentin Johnston goes up for this catch and makes it, and the defensive back has his hands straight up as if he's a basketball player trying to avoid getting a foul call. He's
Yeah.
just not going for the ball,
Mhm.
not touching Quentin Johnston. He's just going straight hands up. I am not going to try to play defense here. This is honestly, if we're going hype meter, I'm gonna say this is
Negative
a
100.
5 on negative hype. Like, this is awful. I
Yeah.
think anything that had us excited about Quentin Johnston, these are the same problems that plagued him in college and as a rookie. Is
Mhm.
he's a big guy that doesn't win contested catches. He can't handle physicality well. He's not a nuanced route runner. I know we want to get excited about the targets and the ways they can use him and the fact that this team is willing and looks like they're willing to teach. But man, like, there's certain things that you won't be able to teach. And so, yeah, it's a 5 on the negative hype meter for me.
Yeah, 5 out of 5 on my hype meter. My hype meter for Lad McConkey.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll go a
Lad
4.
Lad
I'll go a
McConkey's been
4
getting
on
some
Lad.
solid hype out of here, but man, Quentin Johnston, I think it's time to just throw in the towel on him, unfortunately.
May I interest you in any J.K. Dobbins as the RB1?
Let's go on to the Los Angeles Rams.
Los Angeles Rams. Kyron Williams is the clear lead running back here, David. Kyron Williams. Uh, I think it was you that called him the most polarizing player in all of fantasy football right now.
Mhm.
Kyron Williams going to be the clear, or appears to be the clear lead running back in Los Angeles. I guess, what's the hype meter there? Because I feel like we can't get too excited because Blake Corum still exists. We knew Kyron was going to be the clear lead running back, but there's still just opportunities for Blake Corum to get on the field. Being the lead running back doesn't mean he's the only running back. So for me, this is just going to stay exactly where it is. I'm at a 3, where I think this is exactly what we thought all along. We're just using new words to describe Kyron Williams on the field.
Yeah, I think the nice thing is like Sean McVay, and shout out Coach Speak Index, which we talked about at the top of the show. Like they kind of contextualize like how reliable coaches are, and Sean McVay's a guy who does, for the most part, like relative to other coaches, tell the truth, and he has had nothing but good things to say about Kyron Williams. So I think that like for projectable workload, we can project a pretty similar workload to Kyron Williams that we saw last year. Of course, with Kyron Williams, though, we know the issue is health. Like he's already dealing with a foot issue, and he was nicked up multiple times last season, nicked up throughout his college career. So I still think the contingent upside is there for Blake Corum. But if Kyron Williams is getting the same workload we saw last year and he's healthy, he's one of the best values in drafts right now at the end of round 3. Of course, we can't assume that he's going to be healthy and assume that he's going to get the same workload. But I think what we've heard Sean McVay saying about Kyron Williams, you can't ignore. I mean, this guy, it seems like, is Sean McVay's guy. That doesn't mean to stop drafting Blake Corum, because Blake Corum still has the injury away contingent upside. But I think that Kyron Williams is a pretty good value where he's going in round 3 if this is going to be the case.
Wow, you finished exactly on the 2-minute mark. I was watching the timer there. Great job. Miami Dolphins, next team on here. Raheem Mostert expected to be the lead running back. Jalen Wright looking good. And you know what? It's not on the show sheet, but I'll add this in here as well. Devon Achane is said to be getting a heavier workload and being used in new and creative ways. So look at that. All of the running backs for the Miami Dolphins are going to be getting more work and being used. They
Wow.
all look good. This is
Wow.
yeah. What's the hype meter here? Everyone's great.
I mean, Raheem Mostert is a good running back, and he's had so many injuries throughout the early part of his career that he doesn't have a lot of tread on the tires. So I think right now, like I'm constantly conflicted on Raheem Mostert because we know the workload could be there, and he is so suppressed in value right now. He's probably not scoring 20 plus touchdowns again, but he could easily find his way to 15 touches per game. Of course, the concern you have with Raheem Mostert is he still going to be around in the fantasy playoffs? Like, sure, he might be the lead back weeks 1, 2, 3, 4, but at what point does Jalen Wright start to cut into that? Does Devon Achane carve out a larger role? So even though we're hearing all these reports about Raheem Mostert being the clear-cut RB1, I'm still a little bit concerned about drafting him where he's going, knowing that you might not get that production for the full season.
This is going to be a 2 for me. Lead running back can mean so many things. And like you said, we don't know that we're going to get him for the full season. I think Devon Achane's role continues to grow. They showed us, show me, don't tell me. And that's what they did. They showed us in the draft by drafting Jalen
Mhm.
Wright, trading up for Jalen Wright. I know that they got him on day 3, but it was the beginning of day 3. They had all night to say, okay, we want to move up and get this guy if he's available for us. And they did. And he's so similar, Jalen Wright, to Raheem Mostert. Mostert being the lead back in Miami doesn't mean as much as I think we want it to mean on other
Right.
teams here, because we're going to be seeing all 3 of these guys. Next team, Minnesota Vikings. Sam Darnold appears to be locked in as the quarterback 1. Dave, Darnold is dialed in.
I've
Is
never
that
heard this report in the offseason before.
dialed in Darnold?
No, I mean, I think I do want to see Sam Darnold as the quarterback over JJ McCarthy. Just JJ McCarthy is so young and still has to develop. I have a little bit more faith in Sam Darnold to get the ball to Justin Jefferson, get the ball to Jordan Addison, get the ball to TJ Hawkinson when he returns. I'm afraid that if they make the switch to JJ McCarthy, they reel back the pass volume a little bit. They become a little more run heavy. They give him some layups where he can kind of dink and dunk. Where I think Sam Darnold is just a little bit they can do more with him, and I think this is better for the offense. So I'm not ready to move Justin Jefferson ahead of Amon-Ra St. Brown in my rankings, but suspension aside, I have a little bit more interest in Jordan Addison and TJ Hawkinson, knowing that Darnold is probably going to be the starter than I would if McCarthy was.
Next team on here, New England Patriots. I'm not even going to give you a rating for the Vikings here. I'll give it a 2.
It's a 3 for me. It's a 3. All right.
It's yeah, sure, 2.5. That I'm not super excited about the Vikings, but you know what? No, I lied. Let's go back, reverse this production, cut this out. I'm going to go with a 3. I do agree with you, Dave, here.
All
Just
right.
taking a look at what Nick Mullins was able to do with that
Mhm.
Vikings offense, what Josh Dobbs was able to do with that Vikings offense. I think we can get some goodness out of Sam Darnold. It's less about Sam Darnold being drafted and more about the
His
offensive weapons
weapons.
kind of keeping value. I don't know
Right.
that it's going to be Jordan Addison, but my faith is somewhat restored in Justin Jefferson remaining this top option in fantasy football drafts that I can trust a bit more. Next team on here, New England Patriots. Jacoby Brissett and Drake May both playing for the Week 1 job. Whoa, yeah, we knew that. That's why they drafted Drake May. I'm going to give this a 1 because I think Jacoby Brissett is going to be the Week 1 starter. I
Mhm.
don't think there's a real competition at this point. They're just going to let Brissett play. He'll probably get the first 6 weeks of the season or less. If the Patriots go 0-4 to start the season, Drake May's coming onto the field. If Jacoby Brissett gets hurt and Drake May comes on, he's going to keep that job for the rest of the year. We have seen this same song and dance over and over and over. To me, it's a 1. I don't think there's a real competition here.
Yeah, and I think with Gerard Mayo, I think he wouldn't have accepted the job unless he knew that there was some kind of long-term job insulation. So I think a lot of the times you see coaches make that switch from the veteran to the rookie because they feel like their seat's getting warm and they need to do something to preserve their job. I don't know if Gerard Mayo is ever going to really feel that pressure. I think that they rolled him out knowing that there's kind of a long-term plan here. So it honestly wouldn't surprise me if we don't see Drake May at all this season. They might just roll with Jacoby Brissett and kind of give Drake May a redshirt year. So I mean, like, what I wanna say is like, "Oh, this gets me more excited for the weapons in New England," but look at that depth chart. What weapons in New England? Like, yeah, Jacoby Brissett can probably lead a more competent offense, but I don't wanna draft any of these guys. Like, I'll throw some darts at Jalen Polk, and I'll throw some darts at Javon Baker, and Ramadre Stevenson is a contract now, and he should get some work, but this still, whether it's Brissett or Drake May, it's not an offense that I have a ton of excitement about. So, it's a 1 for me.
New Orleans Saints, Dennis Allen has expressed frustrations about Kendre Miller's health. Well,
Can't make
buddy, I
the
got to
team from
tell
the
you.
training room is what he said.
Okay, well, I'm pretty sure everyone is frustrated about Kendre Miller's health. Like that's just you should be frustrated if you're a coach and your players are not healthy. Um, b- what are we doing here, Dennis Allen? Like, what are we doing, man? Like, does he
He
like
just seems like
anyone
a
on his
jerk.
team?
He seriously just comes off, yeah, I'm not the biggest Dennis Allen fan.
Neither is Kendre Miller. So
Uh,
okay, so then where's the? I guess hype meter on this is probably more along the lines of I mean, if he's saying he didn't even say like becoming the RB1, he said make the team, which is
yeah.
just that's unhinged type of talk from a running back they just drafted 2 years ago and really hasn't gotten the shot to be out there. But is the hype meter here more for Alvin Kamara, who that he really has his job locked down? He's not in any risk of losing snaps to a young, fresh running back. Is that kind of where we're at? Because if that's the case, I think I'm at a 5 that I'm just fully bought in on Alvin Kamara. I was already there. Now I'm even more so.
I can't get any higher on Alvin Kamara than I already am. I've got him ranked
You
as a
are
back in
Willie Nelson
RB1.
on Alvin Kamara at the moment.
Yeah, yeah, I can't pull over any farther. Super Troopers reference there for anyone that got that. But yeah, like I'm all in on Alvin Kamara, so I can't get. But I think what this does is like maybe Jamal Williams, a guy that I hadn't even really thought twice about this offseason. We've been drafting Kendre Miller as the guy with contingent upside here, but maybe Jamal Williams is actually the RB2 that you should be drafting instead of Kendre Miller. I'm not saying he is, just something to think about.
Yeah, or you just don't draft anyone and get Alvin Kamara as a steal in the 5th round. Just like New York Giants, Malik Neighbors looking as good as advertised. Daniel Jones locked in as the QB1. Boy, I can't wait for that Giants offense, Dave.
Mhm.
Hype meter, 1 out of 5 here. Let's hear it.
You know, I'm gonna give this one a 5, and I'm fully prepared for you to be the wet blanket Alfredo, but Malik Neighbors is good, and I think that so
I'm
many
not saying
people
he's
have,
not.
like, looked into the downside of, like, "Well, Daniel Jones is throwing him the ball, and the New York Giants suck, and blah, 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 blah," but, like, what happens if Malik Neighbors just pulls 150 plus targets in this offense? It doesn't matter how bad the targets
But
are,
he's
it doesn't
Garrett
matter how
Wilson.
bad the offense is. Yeah, and Garrett Wilson was still giving us back end wide receiver 1 production, so
No, he
I am
wasn't.
hyped about Malik Neighbors. He has looked we knew he was good from his time at LSU. If you've watched Hard Knocks, you know the Giants love him. So I think that Neighbors can kind of volume his way into a back end wide receiver 1, high end wide receiver 2 end of season finish here. So I'm hyped. If there were concerns about Malik Neighbors, I'd be buying into it, but we knew he was good from what he did in college. It sounds like it's immediately translating into training camp. I'm hyped about Malik Neighbors.
Garrett Wilson was the wide receiver 33 on a points per game basis last year.
No.
That's yes.
Ooh. Ooh.
Yes. That's what happens. If you can get your 150 targets, but if they're 150 targets thrown by me, it doesn't matter. And I don't even know that we're going to be seeing that much pass volume. I still kind of stay in the same mindset that I was at before. This Giants offense is not going to be very good. I'm still worried about Daniel Jones, as not just his health, but I'm worried about him as a passer. I think that, by the way, this Hard Knocks offseason show coming out about the Giants, like, it really shows you how much this team did not have faith in Daniel Jones. They
Mhm.
really, really, really kept exploring a trade up to pick
Like, the
3 to
morning
get
of the
Drake May.
draft.
Oh, yeah.
He was, like, begging with the Patriots, offering multiple first-round picks. Yeah, that's,
And I still lean towards Malik Neighbors getting really upset at Daniel Jones and this whole Giants thing blowing up mid-season.
yeah.
I'm very worried about the Giants.
When I watch Hard Knocks, I just think about, like, how sad Daniel Jones must be watching that at home.
Oh, it was rough. It was rough for me, man. Next team on here, New York Jets, Braylon Allen, running back out of Wisconsin. He's a rookie. He's looking good for the Jets and might be locked in as their RB2. He's getting passing down work. He's a big dude at like 230 pounds. So, Dave, hype meter on Braylon Allen?
I wasn't a huge fan of the tape. He's got the measurables, he's got the young breakout age, he's got a lot of things that the spreadsheets really, really like about Braylon Allen, but he just kind of plays soft for his size. And I'm not a big fan of big guys that have the athletic measurables that kind of shy away from contact and struggle to break tackles. So I don't want to say I'm too excited about this, but he and Brees Hall make up a very typical thunder and lightning type of backfield. So where we saw, Brees Hall getting so much work between the tackles last year, they didn't really have anybody else to take that away from him. Maybe we do see Brees Hall get reeled back a little bit on the early down stuff. Braylon Allen get a little bit involved. And I don't think that's necessarily bad for Brees Hall because so much of his value comes in the passing game. And we saw an RB2 finish with almost no touchdowns last year. So hype, I guess I'll give this one like a 2 out of 5. It wouldn't bother me that much for Brees Hall's outlook, even if Braylon Allen does carve out a role for himself.
That's where I'm at as well. We did the same thing last year with Izzy Abanikanda on the Jets, and it's interesting because to me the Jets keep drafting these players at least to back up Brees Hall at running back that I wasn't a huge fan of the film. I had the same thoughts on Braylon Allen, had the same thoughts on Izzy Abanikanda. These are not, to me, complete prospects that were, far and away these top running backs in their class. I think they were overhyped. They end up on a team behind Brees Hall, and I think that Brees is going to continue to get the volume that we all want to see. I don't think Braylon Allen is a good enough pass catcher to take away passing down role, or that he is good
Right.
enough between the tackles to take away a goal line role. So
Exactly.
it's very similar to what I said with Travis Etienne and Tank Bigsby. I don't think Allen is better than Brees Hall at anything, and I don't think he'll have a defined role. This is just an insurance plan for them in case something does happen to Brees Hall. Next team on here, Philadelphia Eagles. AJ Brown and Devontae Smith are moving around the offense a ton. Very similar to what we saw with CeeDee Lamb last year on the Cowboys. Now that Kellen Moore is the offensive coordinator over in
Keenan
Philly.
Allen last year and CeeDee Lamb 2 years
Excuse
ago.
me.
Yes,
You're
yes.
so
I
right.
got you.
Keenan
I know
Allen
where your
last
head
year.
is.
Thanks, babe. Keenan Allen last year on the Chargers, and 2 years ago, CeeDee Lamb on the Cowboys. So it's exciting. I'm actually very pumped about this because I think that one of the things that we kind of always said these guys get capped on, at least in Philly, was the passing offense in general just didn't have a lot of volume. There wasn't a lot of creativity. It was just heavy RPO stuff. It was hit the first target and then run for Jalen Hurts. The fact these guys are going to move around a bit more shows me there's going to be a bit more creativity and a little bit more run after the catch ability for these guys who I think AJ Brown, that could just absolutely unlock who he is. And Devontae Smith could become a PPR machine if that's the case, and he can play out of the slot. So for me, Dave, this is a 5. I'm pretty
Yeah.
excited about the Eagles offense.
5 for me as well. And there's been so much talk about who's going to be the motion man in this Kellen Moore's offense because we saw CeeDee Lamb with that role and it was great for him. We saw Keenan Allen in that role and it was great for him. But you look back at those offenses, they never really had a serviceable wide receiver two, so they kind of forced so much to the wide receiver one. Now with two very versatile and talented wide receivers in AJ Brown and Devonta Smith, maybe Kellen Moore changes up his personnel a little bit. So I'm excited for both of these guys. The other reports we've been getting out of Philadelphia are that Jalen Hurts has been on fire, absolutely locked in, looking like a better version of himself than he ever has. And I think so much of our conception on the Eagles is tainted because of the Jalen Hurts injury last year, but a healthy Jalen Hurts in a new offense, this could be a lot of fun.
Next team on here, Pittsburgh Steelers. Pat Freiermuth is reaping the benefits as the clear second target in this offense. It's an Arthur Smith led offense, and Arthur Smith loves his tight ends. And the Steelers really don't have anything else outside of George Pickens. The wide receiver cupboard is very bare. Tight ends, I'm not going to say they have tight ends aplenty over there, but they've got a few different options. I would say it is very clear. Pat Freiermuth, and we knew this before the report that Pat Freiermuth was going to be the second target on this team. Dave, does that mean that he is someone that you're willing to draft? Because for me right now, hearing this report confirms everything I already knew. It
Yep.
keeps me at a 5 on Pat Freiermuth, and it's not because I want to go and draft Pat Freiermuth up in the top 10. It's because he's already been my favorite late round tight end to draft, and it's going to stay that way because I don't think enough people are drafting Pat Freiermuth where he needs to go.
Yep, Pat Freiermuth's a very good football player. Had a down 2023 season because of a lot of injuries, but now with Diontae Johnson out of the picture, vacating 150 plus targets in an offense that prioritizes tight end usage, yeah, Pat Fryermuth's a screaming value right now. We talked about Cole Kmet earlier. Cole Kmet and Pat Fryermuth are going back to back in drafts based on Football Guys ADP right now. Cole Kmet, the potential sixth or seventh option in the offense, compared to Pat Fryermuth, a guy who is very likely to be number 2 in targets. That is crazy, crazy, crazy to me. 5 out of 5. I like Pat Fryermuth, like the opportunity in this offense. He should be much higher than where he's currently getting drafted as tight end 16.
San Francisco 49ers. Brandon Ayuk is at camp, out there running around, catching passes despite his trade request. Honestly, it doesn't seem like it's going to happen. So this is more of a question as to what is the hype meter on Brandon Ayuk's season and fantasy value this year? Did you really just throw up a 0?
Well, I think
David,
this is kind of the worst case scenario for everyone. Like, we wanted to see Brandon Ayuk go to a place where he can see a bigger target share. Brandon Ayuk leaving also would have been good news for Debo Samuel and George Kittle and Ricky Pearsall. So I think this is good news for the San Francisco 49ers, like 5 out of 5 if you're a 49ers fan. But from a fantasy outlook, this is bad news for Brandon Ayuk, Debo Samuel, George Kittle, and Ricky Pearsall. You're still drafting them where they're going because they all have week winning upside anytime they step on the field. But Brandon Ayuk is a guy who has really struggled to see an elite target share in this offense. And I think we're going to see that again, where in order for him to pay off at ADP, we're going to need absolute crazy efficiency, which could happen and has happened in the past. But I think that you're looking at a shakier floor week to week with all of these guys now that Brandon Ayuk is likely to stay in San Francisco.
a 0 is just nasty business by you. Brandon Ayuk, I'm gonna stay in the middle, man. Like it's 3. It's the exact same thing. Just because he wanted a trade request, didn't get it. It's not like they don't work it out and he doesn't play and then play well. This is
And
still
he might still get an extension. I mean, that's not off the table either. Like the
yeah.
49ers like to give these extensions like in the final hour.
Yeah, so I'm gonna stick just right there in the middle at a 3 on that one. Seattle Seahawks, Jackson Smith-Njigba, JSN, expecting a larger role. This has me excited. I've been very in on the Seahawks throughout this offseason, very in on Ryan Grubb, very in on this vertical attack. JSN surprisingly good as a deep receiver downfield. He's got one of the better ball tracking skill sets of wide receivers in the league, which is, I think a lot of people would be surprised to learn that. He's actually more efficient catching the ball downfield than he is in some sort of short slot role. This is everything he got to do at Ohio State. I am very excited about this. Put me at a 5 on Jackson Smith-Njigba and the Seattle Seahawks offense. I'm very excited, Dave.
Yeah, if this was like a year 4 guy or something like that, I'd be a little bit concerned and try not to get too excited about it. But this is a year 2 guy who dealt with injuries through rookie camp and training camp and the preseason. He never really had a good chance to get up to NFL speed. And now with a clean bill of health going into year 2, I think the runway is clear for takeoff. So yeah, give me a 4 out of 5 on this one. I'm excited for JSN.
And just really quick, like he didn't have a bad rookie year. If we're maybe for fantasy
Right.
purposes, sure. This was a good rookie year by NFL standards, especially considering how bad the offense was and the type of competition he had on that team. So I'm excited to see where he goes this season. Tampa Bay Buccaneers reports that both Bucky Irving and Sean Tucker, are looking impressive. Okay, this is what we get. We get a lot of this other running back that's not the starter is looking good. Dave, how much are you buying into this that these other running backs are looking impressive for the Buccaneers?
Well, I think there's a lot that you need to take notice of here in Tampa Bay. First, Dave Canales is gone, and he's the one that gave so much of the workload to Rashad White last year. Rashad White wasn't great. He was able to save his fantasy production with a lot of catches and a lot of touchdowns, but expecting that again in 2024 is kind of tough to project all of that going his way. And I think the big thing too is that Bucky Irving, a lot of the raves that he's been getting out of training camp are about his involvement in the passing game. So if Bucky Irvin does get involved in the passing game, that would really limit the ceiling for Rashad White. I don't want to buy into this too much, but I could very easily see a world where all of the volume that made Rashad White so good last year gets cut down maybe 30-40%, and then all of a sudden Rashad White becomes a boomer bust RB3. So this is what I am going to be paying pretty close attention to, because Rashad White already has some of the telltale signs of being a dead zone running back, and if the young guys are looking good, that just raises the risk of him being a bust.
I'm going to put this at a 2 because I think that if the Bucks were really intentional about taking the workload off Rashad White, they would have drafted a running back earlier. They would have added someone else in free agency. They decided to take one of the running backs with the worst athletic profiles in the class, a receiving back who Rashad White is already a pretty good receiving back. And then Sean Tucker was an undrafted running back, or I believe 7th round from 2 years ago. I can't remember. Um, this does not seem like the Bucks are going out of their way to say we want to lighten the load for Rashad White. And it's just, I think that a lot of this is the fluff that reporters are trying to build. That one of these guys is going to be the running back too. One of these guys is going to be a weapon we should get excited about. When really, and I'm not even a Rashad White guy, I think it's just going to continue to be him getting the bulk of the carries and getting a similar workload to what we saw last year. Tennessee Titans. Tony Pollard and Tyjae Spears are sharing reps with the starters. Both look good. Dave, we talked
We
about
knew
Tyjae
this.
Spears a little bit.
Yeah,
Yeah, we knew this. This isn't anything new. Instead of hype meter here, who are you going with? Tony Pollard or Tyjae Spears?
both of them. I mean, I remember Bob Harris and we did a show during the first week of free agency, and I was so perplexed by the Tony Pollard signing, because the first thing I said was their skill sets overlap, and like I don't really understand what to make of this. I think this could very likely be a 50-50 split. Both of these guys have breakaway run potential. They can both catch passes out of the backfield. So I keep going back to last year in Pittsburgh, where you're getting kind of serviceable production from both Jalen Warren and Najee Harris. I could see something similar here in Tennessee. Both these guys, of course, have the contingent upside if one goes down as well. So, should you draft Tajay Spears or should you draft Tony Pollard? My answer is both of them. Keep drafting these guys.
Yeah, just whoever falls to you. That's how I'm doing it. I'm not going in there with a plan of attack too much. I'll say I prefer Tyjae Spears a little bit more. Final team here. We've made it. We've made it to team number 32. The Washington Commanders, Jaden Daniels showcasing traits of a franchise QB in quotes here. So let's just talk about this from the fantasy football perspective and what it could mean for the other weapons. Dave, what's the hype on Jaden Daniels? I still think there are going to be some limitations for him, and I am going to peel back the hype a little bit to a 4. But I'm excited for what he can do specifically for fantasy. I don't know that I'm that excited. If I want to talk about the receiving options that he has there, that's probably more of just a 3. I think we're going to get more of the same for the receiving options there. But his rushing ability and the upside for fantasy there, I'm going to give that a 4.
Yeah, I think I'm tempering expectations a bit for all the pass catchers, because there's so many there. Like he could really just be spraying the ball all over the field in Washington. My hype for Jaden Daniels is a 5. I mean, we could be looking at a guy who is just on an efficiency basis, on a per dropback basis, just breaking fantasy football. Like this guy could immediately be one of the best rushing quarterbacks in the league, and he has the weapons around him to facilitate a passing attack as well. You typically don't hear bad stories coming out about quarterbacks who were drafted top 3, but I do like the glowing reports that they said, he just is, commanding the respect of everybody on offense. He looks good out there, looking all the parts of a franchise quarterback. I do like hearing those stories. I can't just say like, okay, I'm in on Jaden Daniels after being out on him for a full whole offseason. It would be silly to do that, but I've already been very much so in on Jaden Daniels. So this is just confirming the priors that I had, the beliefs that I had. I'll give this one a 4 out of 5.
Well, there you have it. 32 teams, 32 headlines, a little bit over 32 players. Not bad for us. And we were able to do it
Yeah,
here in about an hour. That was great. Good
we
times,
did it.
Dave. Good
We did
times.
it. It was
We
fun.
did it. We're going to keep going with training camp week here at Football Guys, where on Wednesday, we're going to take a look at some of the deep sleepers, some of the reports coming out of training camp for these guys that are going to be your last round picks, players that we have not talked about. And we want to make a point of talking about players we have not discussed before and really get those in front of you guys this week. And all the training camp stuff is going to, continue to just rise. This hype train is going to keep going. There's going to be more fluff and more excitement. And,
Just have fun with it, guys.
we're going to be here along the way with you guys. Yeah. Yeah.
Got a lot of
Uh,
training camp to talk about, but man, it's Thursday. We have football. Hall of Fame game is on Thursday. I mean, it's not like real
hmm.
football,
Yeah, no,
but
it's not.
it's NFL jerseys on a field. You might not know the names playing, but it's close, man. My itch is being scratched, Alfredo.
You should probably get that checked out. Go to a doctor. We're going to be back on Wednesday. As always, I want to remind everybody to make sure you are subscribed to the Football Guys Daily News Updates, where you're going to get everything you need to win your fantasy football league straight to your email inbox from the big man himself, Joe Bryant. For myself, for Dave, for everyone here at Football Guys, we want to thank you guys for watching, listening all the way through. We'll see you next time. Adios.